Good morning, everyone. I'm Ernesto Brady, publisher of New Hampshire Business Review, and I am thrilled to welcome you to NextGen New Hampshire, an event featuring inspiring Granite State women business leaders discussing the importance of mentorship, professional development, and pathways towards senior leadership. And while we all wish that we were meeting in person for this event, we're grateful, I'm grateful both to our team and to our speakers' willingness and ability to take advantage of technology to reinvent this event and still bring you this important discussion. I'm also grateful to our sponsors for seeing a value in this discussion and sticking with us as we transition to a digital platform. They are Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, Tufts Health Freedom, and Connection. Again, we're grateful for their support. And with that, I am going to get out of the way, introduce Jeff Feingold, the editor of New Hampshire Business Review, who will cue up the rest of the program for you. Jeff.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. Really appreciate it. First of all, as Ernesto said, we really welcome you warmly to this event. This is the first of the kind we've done. We've done a series of webinars, but this is the first time we've taken one of our live events and put it online, and we've had a great response to it. I'm really excited about this. Actually, I could feel some of the energy that we would have if we had a packed room, which we would have had anyway. Well, now we have kind of a packed NextGen New Hampshire event digitally. I just want to welcome all of you and tell you that this is a really special event for us. We've never done this before. We have done a couple of events called Powered by Women that were very, very successful. It included panels of more experienced women business leaders who gave their perspectives on their lives and shared their thoughts and their insights on just adapting to the business world. And now we have a younger generation of panelists there who are really, really very impressive women. They have all come from different experiences, different backgrounds, and but they all have something in common, that they all have come to realize and come a great wisdom about their lives and have a greatly are really able to share some of the things that they've learned and actually developed over the years. So I just want to get out of the way now and introduce our associate editor, Lisa Ryla, award-winning associate editor, I should say. And she'll be the moderator of this panel. Lisa herself is a woman with great perspective on things, and I think she'll be a great moderator today. So once again, welcome everybody, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, thank you everyone for attending this event digitally. I think you will learn a lot from our speakers. I know as a young woman myself who I actually started my journalism career, I basically say from age 18, because I did a ton of internships before I got my first professional job. And just to give you a little background, I worked on the Kiplinger Letter in Washington, D.C., and then I joined New Hampshire Business Review in 2014. And I think that this is an important topic for us to cover because in the Granite State, obviously we know New Hampshire has a population that a lot of our population is much older, and so we wanted to highlight some of the young leaders in the state and show the rising stars and what share some of their advice too on how they've reached different points of their careers. I think it'll be a very informative event. And so with that, I wonder if we can switch to the next slide and I will introduce our speakers. So we are going to have Pubali Chakravorty-Campbell, who is an HR professional. And then we have Sara B, who is financial advisor with Merrill Lynch, and Loretta Brady she is a psychology professor at St. Anselm College, and then Aimee Giglio, who is Chief Human Resources Officer at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. So to kick off our presentation, we're going to have Pubali speak. And so Pubali she started her career as an entrepreneur, very accomplished entrepreneur. She started the Manchester-based Bikram Yoga Studio, which won multiple awards. Leveraging her background in business administration, and she decided to pursue further career in executive coaching and as a senior certified HR professional. So she was with HR Partners for some time, and she rose to the role of CEO, and that was her previous position. But she has a lot of great background, especially I'm interested in hearing her advice to young professionals that are seeking to, rise in the ranks and learn what sort of skills will help them in their career. So with that being said, I'll let you take off, Pubali.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm looking forward to kind of sharing a little bit of my story with you, along with some of the lessons I've learned along the way. But before I get too far, I wanted to thank Jeff Feingold for referring to us as young women, because a few years ago, I stopped getting carded at the New Hampshire liquor stores. I don't get carded at all. And I went from Miss to ma'am. And so those are both very sad things. And I'm grateful to you, Jeff, for making me feel like a young lady. So thank you so much. Yeah, so I have an interesting perspective on this topic, and I'm really honored to be here and be speaking with all of you, because I have what is classically known as an unorthodox background. I went into a global family business at a very, very young age. Bikram Yoga, Bikram is my family business, and so never thought I would do that, and spent a very long time in my career working on both sides of the family business. I had my own facility in Manchester. I was with, involved with headquarters in California. And really that's where I started my foundation, in both as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and also fancy myself as a leader at least, and as just a member of the community here in New Hampshire. And over the years, I have done one thing consistently, which has been very brave and bold about pivoting. And I think pivoting is a really important part of leadership, and to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. I would say that's the most important lesson I learned as a young entrepreneur in the fitness industry, is discomfort equals change. And change is a thing that's scary, but it's also a thing that's very important. So I guess that is my official first piece of advice and learning to share with all of you, is the importance of making sure at all phases of your career that you're finding ways to shift and grow and pivot, and not get too comfortable, because the growth doesn't always happen in that space. So, but with that said, my slides. I thought a lot about what to share with all of you, and consistently I landed at a few things. The first is the importance of living in service to others. I am Indian American. My parents came here from India in the late 60s, and I come from what's called the collective society, which means that we, as a culture, Indian culture, we think of ourselves and others at the same time. And so whatever I do for my own benefit, and I do for the benefit of my family, my community. And that is a part of my personal cornerstone, as well as my philosophy for business and leadership, is that it's always about the collective. Now, not always appropriate, and I know that's important. Some of you are thinking, I can't always do that, but and you shouldn't. But as a large part of a leadership best practice for me, it's been to keeping in mind the importance of doing things for other people. And I found that sometimes when I feel my worst, or I feel my smallest or my least, is when I feel like it's time for me to go out and do something for other people, because it gives me a sense of accomplishment, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something correct when other things aren't working out. So that's my first big aha lesson for all of you, is thinking about what you're doing for other people and the frequency with which you're doing it. And next slide, please, and thank you. This is great. I don't have to do it myself today. There we go. Thank you so much. Learning how to say no. Earlier today, some of the greatest thinking happens in the shower, right? And I was thinking to myself, this slide, I kind of wish I had named it something different. I wish I had said on it, getting comfortable with no, because no has two sides. No has the side of you hearing no, and no has the side of you saying no. And I think for my personal experiences, I think about the importance of both, not just saying no, but also hearing no. Growth happens when we hear no. No comes for a lot of reasons. No comes because maybe we're not qualified. No comes for maybe we weren't there at the right time. No comes for reasons that may be fair, unfair, right, wrong. But when we hear no, it gives us an opportunity to try again. It gives us an opportunity to do it better. And it gives us an opportunity to consider whether we wanted something in the first place. And so I think hearing no is one of the most essential aspects of life. And also learning how to say no. I know personally, and have studied this from an academic standpoint, the challenges of saying no. People have a lot of complexes and behavioral reasons for being very, very skittish about saying no liberally. Some people do, some people don't, but the overwhelming majority has a challenge with that. And no is a very powerful word. And I think as a young leader, as a person who's emerging in the business world, when you say no and it's attached to your personal values and it's attached to things that you care about and that are important to you and that represent you and your priorities, the no feels very different than when you're saying no and you don't know why. And I hope that makes sense. But as you go through your life, you're going to be hearing requests, you're going to be getting requests, you're going to be getting a lot of demands. And I think your growth and success to some degree depends on whether you accept those challenges or you reject those challenges. And earlier I said it's important to be challenged and be uncomfortable. It's equally as important to know when not to be. And so I think that's my next big aha thing is the importance of hearing and saying no. Next slide, please. Focusing on the race and not your competition. When I started my business a long time ago here in this community, I noticed that a lot of my contemporaries were not very excited about meeting me and speaking with me. And I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete essentially my entire life. And what I always found is that when I would compete, when I would do something where there were others like me and we were all looking to get to this one place at the same time, my focus was not on them. My focus was on myself, my race, my performance. And whether or not I got to the end, to the finish line, was not always the most important thing to me. And I think that for me has been a business practice, is I've seen in my career, especially as an entrepreneur, how frequently people tend to focus and obsess and get really fixated on their competition. I loved hearing, somebody said to me once, I have a lot of, not me, they were saying about themselves, I have a lot of competitors, but I don't have competition. And I really respect that perspective, because as a younger business person who's emerging, if you get too caught up in what other people are doing and saying, then you're actually limiting your own growth and your own success. So when I talk about focusing on the race, I talk about what have you done to prepare? What are you putting into the race? Where is it that you're trying to go? What does the course look like? What are going to be the obstacles on the course? And focusing all of your energy on that, keeping in mind there's other competitors in the race, but at the end of the day, when the race is over, those people are your friends and you want to have a good relationship with them. Rising tides always lift all ships, right? So this is a very important part of my personal practice as well as a business person, as a leader, and as an HR professional who works within organizations trying to develop talent, is thinking about how important it is to focus on yourself, not on other people when you're in a competitive environment. Okay, next slide, please. And I know it's a time box, so I'm trying to move quickly. So if I'm speaking quickly, that's why. This is a very important lesson to me. When I was a little younger and inexperienced, I used to think that I was doing everything by myself, right? I was the one who was opening the business in the early morning, closing the business late at night. I was the one that was going and doing all the errands, everything from cleaning toilets all the way to, negotiating contracts. And I had a little bit of an unhealthy ego, a little bit of an arrogance about that. And a lot of times that happens in the early phases of someone's career, where they really find some success and they think that, oh my gosh, I'm on top of the world. And you are. But I think it's really important to remember that nobody gets anywhere like that by themselves. I think about my family, I think about my friends, I think about the people that have sacrificed a lot and have given me opportunities so that I can get to where I am today. I have a husband, a mother, a daughter. I have peers, colleagues, members of my community socially and professionally that have all been a part of my journey. And every time I think and reflect on success, I think about the fact that I didn't get here alone. And that will never change for me. I think that as I go through the rest of my career, I'm always going to be supported and lifted by others, and I'm going to be held back by others. And the people that I am lifted and supported by are the people that are a part of my journey. So I want you as the audience to think about that, as who is in your circle, who is in your corner, and to always respect and treat them that way, because they're going to be a part of your journey for a very long time. And you want to remember that it is important to keep them there and to respect that and to be grateful for that. So that's my next piece of advice. And just a couple more here, and I'll step into the next one. Fortunately, I didn't memorize these, and otherwise I'd keep babbling. Yes, so the learning part is really important to me. in HR, we have a concept called the learning organization, which is that organizations which from top to bottom, from left to right, at every level of the hierarchy, people are encouraged, in some cases required, to be a learner, to take courses, to take classes, to attend conferences, and then to come back and share that knowledge. Learning is growing. Learning is stretching. And when you are a great learner, you are constantly expanding your horizons. I have met just as many people that believe, very seriously believe, that they have arrived, they don't need to learn, and that learning is not the best usage of their time. And I've met people that are in getting their 7th graduate degree or 7th master's degree or getting their 2nd PhD. And learning is an interesting thing that way, because some people are opposed to it, some people are for it. I can tell you employers of choice are learning organizations. I can tell you some of the top performers are learners. And it's not just about going and seeking education, but it's also being a good student when you get there. And a good student is someone who is open, who doesn't bring their bias in, that is there to learn and is open to hearing perspectives that aren't theirs. So learning at all times is something that I feel has helped me as a professional and has really offered me opportunities and has offered me confidence, which I think are all 3 aspects of being successful as a leader. And I believe I have my final slide next, which is, and if there's one more, I apologize, I may have completely lost track of that one, which is writing your definition of correct. And this is the one I wanted to spend a couple extra minutes on, which is why it's important to me. Is when I started out my career, I noticed right out of the gate that people wanted to marginalize and to reduce me into whatever was convenient for them. If they saw a young woman running a business, they saw a young woman. If they saw a fitness instructor or a trained yoga professional running a business, they wanted to put me into the corner of, oh, that's a yoga teacher. Even to this day, I meet people that still really focus on the fact that I'm just a yoga teacher, which I'm not anymore. And what I learned was that we are always going to have people that apply to us their definition of correct. They are going to want us to meet them where they are. And as an executive coach, I can tell you that success in relationships comes with meeting people where they are, not expecting everybody to meet you where you are. And so as you go through your career, how you do it is up to you. What you want to be recognized as or how you want to be recognized is up to you. There will be people who are going to reduce you into whatever's convenient for them. And they're not going to be shy about it either. And as you meet these people, you have a choice to make. You can either listen to them and believe them, or you can challenge them, or you can defy them, or you can listen to them and just push it aside and continue your journey. But the most important part of this lesson is that your definition of correct, provided that it's good for you, it's good for other people, it doesn't do harm, is a correct that is yours and yours only. And other people, if it doesn't satisfy them, that shouldn't be where you put your focus. The only exception to that would be if your definition of correct is somehow not working for you and it's holding you back. And at that point, you need to really think about taking the advice of other people. But I am not just a yoga teacher. I'm not just an HR professional. I'm not just anything. I'm a very well-rounded person with a lot of experience. And if I had listened to those people early in my career, I don't think that I would have gotten to where I am today. And so I urge all of you to think about what is your definition of correct? How do you want to be known? And as you go through your life, find the people that accept and welcome your definition, provided that there is not an opportunity for you to get better and improve. And if there is, listen to that advice. So with that, I believe I may have exceeded my 5 minutes. I hope I haven't. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Pubali. I think that was a really great way to kick off our event this morning, because I know from my own career, it's very important to focus on your own personal growth, as Pubali mentioned, and not, comparing yourself to others. And especially it related to me when you're talking about challenges, because I know myself, I'm a quiet introvert. And so working in journalism, I know there were moments where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk to this high up government official, and, your heart's fluttering and trying to get over the anxiety of the moment. And sometimes, the anxiety could be unbearable. But once I did it, oh man, I just felt elated at, you know, how I had overcome my own insecurities and I had kind of pushed forward my career another step. So I think it's really important for us all to look at those moments in our life and how we can push ourselves further and, you know, really challenge ourselves, because I don't think there's a single challenge that I would say I regret doing. You always feel better on the end, and it's good to focus on your professional growth. So with that, we're going to talk to another young professional, which is Sara B. She is a financial solutions advisor at Merrill Lynch in Manchester. Her finance career launched in 2013 as an internal wholesaler at Transamerica Capital, and she rose there to regional vice president. And I think it's interesting talking to Sara as well, because she is from Manchester, had attended college out in Denver, but has returned to the Granite State. And so I think she's got an interesting perspective to share in terms of how she has grown her career, and especially bringing that career back home. So with that, Sara, I'll let you take over.
Good morning, everyone. Huge thank you to New Hampshire Business Review for getting this event together. Despite the circumstances, it's amazing that we can still gather as a community, so thank you. And thank you to my fellow panelists. I'm truly humbled and honored to be among you this morning. So my name is Sara B. As Lisa mentioned, I'm a New Hampshire boomeranger, as coined by Stay Work Play, and you can advance to the next slide. Which means that I grew up here in New Hampshire, left for a while, and recently found my way back home. It was at a young age that my parents and first mentors taught me the importance of always challenging myself, being trustworthy and reliable, and showing up and following through. As you can advance to the next slide. I ventured out to the University of Colorado at Boulder and pursued my degree in psychology. And it was after graduating that was the first time that I didn't know what my next step was, which was really scary. And so I decided to attend a career fair on my campus, which may seem obvious, but if you've never been to a career fair, it can be terrifying. I remember walking into a sea of a ton of people that I didn't know, and was one of probably 1,000 students there that day that was looking for a job. And so I built up enough courage to walk around and to talk to anyone who was hiring for sales. I like to talk to people, so I figured I could figure out how to sell. And I found myself talking to a gentleman at Transamerica, which is a financial services firm in Denver. And I was a psychology major, mind you. I didn't know the first thing about finance, but this gentleman was impressed with my ability to look him in the eye, to shake his hand, and to have a genuine conversation. At the age of 23, I was one of the only females hired to be on the Transamerica sales desk. And it was my job to call on financial advisors, many of whom were older males, and to sell them mutual funds. And I kid you not, I didn't even know what a mutual fund was. But I rose to the challenge and I educated myself on the financial markets, on the products and services we offered. But I came to realize that in order to be successful in this role, it was going to be because I was a trustworthy, reliable resource and someone who showed up to follow through for the clients that I served. It was in this role that I was challenged by a mentor and my manager at the time, who always challenged me to reach for more and to really do my best. I applied for and obtained a position, as Lisa said, a regional vice president, which means I was an outside sales representative, and moved to Nashville, Tennessee to call again on financial advisors who are much older than me, much more experienced than me. And I was traveling around states as a 25-year-old that I had never set foot in. And anyone who's ever had a career in sales knows how challenging it can be day to day, especially when you're in person, literally facing rejection every single day and overcoming many objections and obstacles. But I loved it. And I also fell in love with the financial services industry. Again, something I knew nothing about when I was studying in college. I came to see how important it was because so many people needed assistance in this area. And I became to truly understand and appreciate the role of a financial advisor. These people that I was calling on were the people who their clients called upon on the most important and crucial moments in their life and helped them to make important decisions. And so it was through these experiences that I realized that I wanted to be that person in people's lives. I wanted to be that go-to life advisor that people could trust and rely on in the most important times of their lives and help them make educated decisions. You can advance to the next slide. And so an opportunity arose to join a family friend back here in Manchester at Merrill Lynch. And taking this leap would mean leaving a very high-paying position, a well-established business, to move home to New Hampshire, where I hadn't lived since I graduated college, and to start building a business from the ground up, from zero. It was scary, but I knew like any challenge, it presented amazing opportunities. And I would have the opportunity to build my business the way that I wanted and to work with the individuals that I wanted to, and to be there as a trustworthy, reliable resource and advisor for them. And so when I first came home, I remember going to one of my first networking events and walking in to what felt like the career fair back at my college. I was walking into a sea full of people who I didn't know and needed to build up the courage to walk in, introduce myself, look people in the eye, shake their hands, and have the courage to be myself and present myself as a trustworthy and reliable individual. And like any business owner, I can tell you that I face daily challenges. Challenges that present themselves in many ways, like face-to-face objections, as we've just seen, crazy financial markets in the last couple months. But I continue to persevere and see success. And one success story I'll share with you is just a couple months ago before the holidays, a friend of mine reached out to me. She had suddenly lost her father, and her mother was to inherit the entire estate. She had never dealt with the family finances before and was not only burdened with grieving her husband, but was now terrified of the idea of managing all of her household finances. My friend and client reached out to me in this time of need and asked me to connect with her mother. And after just one conversation, I was able to talk to her and to explain how I work with my clients and how we'd be able to help her through this difficult time. And it was after just one conversation, she was able to see that I was a trustworthy, reliable person who would be there for her in this time of need. And I could already feel her being more confident and comfortable as she stepped into this role. And so it was in that time that I truly realized that I was where I'm supposed to be. I'm showing up the way that I want to be, and people see that, and they're willing to introduce me to people, and especially people like that who need my help. And so, oops, sorry, Lisa, you can go to the next slide. And so how appropriate that I've completed my boomerang and I'm back where I started. And I'm seeing success the same way that I've always seen success in my life, be it at a career fair, as I launched my career, or as I'm now here building my business. I'm showing up the way that I want to be. I'm continuing to challenge myself. I'm continuing to show up as a trustworthy and reliable resource and someone who's going to be there and follow through. I'm so grateful to be back here in New Hampshire. I can't imagine living anywhere else. I'm grateful for our community that's come together, especially in this insane time of need. And I'm so encouraged by all that's happening here. So thank you all for your continued support. I look forward to a time we can be together again.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a great presentation. I think too that I recall actually Sarah was at one of our events. I believe it was either Powered by Women or Outstanding Women in Business. And we had one of our speakers note that she was so impressed that Sarah had introduced herself and was, trying to make connections as she returned back to New Hampshire. And that is so key, especially in a small state like ours, to network with people. I think that, Granite Staters, it's just an amazing community. I'm working right now on an upcoming publication we're calling Resilient New Hampshire. And, just the sense that we really have this community feel here in such a small state. You're always, 1 or 2 degrees from someone that you don't know. So it's important to talk with others in terms of either launching your career, furthering your career, or, just making important connections that you never know how they might pay off down the line, especially someone who might serve as a mentor to you. I forgot to mention as well, I hope that everyone who's watching is thinking about what sort of questions they would like to ask our panelists. There is a question mark icon at the top of your screen where you can write in questions. Feel free to do that at any time, and I will go over them at the end of everyone's presentation. So with that, I'd like to move on to Loretta Brady. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, writer, and professor of psychology at St. Anselm College, where she directs Requity Labs and serves as co-director for the Center for Teaching Excellence. Loretta, for a long time, wrote a column for us, A Seat at the Table, which was really a great, column that looked at inclusiveness in the business world. She is also working with, she's doing some interesting work at the moment that I'll let her elaborate on in terms of her writings. And with that, Loretta, I'll let you take over. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ernesto. New Hampshire Business Review for the invitation. I'm already so inspired this morning by Pubali and Sara's words, so I am really honored to be here. And with that, I want to introduce you to my family. So you see before you my husband, Brian. He's the director of Inkwell Interactive at Southern New Hampshire University, and our 5 children, and our little dog, who is a little bit bigger now. She was a puppy then. So, yeah, it's a sleigh full of humans that are along for the ride that I'm in here with my life. So next slide, please. It was a rare date night that my husband and I got to get away from that lovely little group of humans and saw a show, a reintroduction of Porgy and Bess at American Repertory Theater. And in the playbill was this quote from the playwright who had adapted this new version of a classic musical. And she had written that if you were going into new and important territory, you've got to be much more than badass. You've got to be bold. Next slide, please. And my husband had written that quote down and registered the domain. And many years later, I produced my first book, which is called Badass and Bold, which is a personal strategic planning tool. And it really took in the knowledge that I had gained as a clinical psychologist working with highly stressed workforces and individuals who had chronic illnesses and were trying to manage their lives around those illnesses. So combining that knowledge with the knowledge and the joy of having a big full life and a big full family, a big house, poured it into this, this volume. Next slide, please. So the work that I've done with patient communities, with organizations, and even in our own family life here has always started with a recognition that I am a resource just as much as anything else around me might be, and that if I run low, so does everything else that I might be able to contribute to. So this tool that I created starts with this premise of tending your garden and really centers the kinds of things that are important to you for you to sustain the energy that you have to give yourself and those around you. Next slide. A second principle that this tool focuses on is legacy. And I think Pubali and Sara both spoke to this point in their stories, that you really need to know what your values are, and you need to know what your vision is for your own life. And if you have a sense of what those two things are, and of course there may be many values you operate with, but if you have a sense of what those two things are, then the very difficult choices you have before you, do I take this opportunity or this opportunity? Do I move back home? Do I not? All of those very difficult, challenging questions are much easier to answer when you know what your filters are, right? When you know what your value positions are. And of course, you might be connected to other people who have different values and visions, and then you have to navigate and negotiate those things. But focusing on what you want that legacy that you're leaving behind to be about is a really important strategy, because you're going to have way more difficult decisions than you might expect, given a plan that you've laid out for yourself. Next slide, please. And as you know from that opening slide, I've got a big family. Nothing I do is possible without thinking through and thinking about and thinking with those people. So nurturing others as a mindset is really similar to what Pubali opened with, really recognizing who you're connected to, what that connection requires at any given moment, and thinking through what might that connection require over the next X number of days, weeks, years, because then you know what you can commit to and what you can't commit to, right? When you have a sense of what you're anticipating, it makes it easier to say yes or say no to some of the choices that you may have before you. Next slide, please. And here, you know, a learning organization is a leading organization. And so too, people who lead need to learn. And no matter what role you may have or aspire to, you are a leader, right? You're leading your own life, you're leading choices that you're making. And then also you're embedded within organizations and institutions and community that is set to react to what you think and what you want. So recognizing that power requires some responsibility to improve yourself and to stretch. And I don't necessarily think that needs to look the same for everyone. And, you know, we all need to be able to do many talent required things, but most of us have an interest beyond what we spend our daily time doing. And I think that we feel a sense of satisfaction and a sense of possibility when we're able to nurture and feed those aspects of ourselves, even if that's around the edges of all the other must-dos and requirements of your daily life. So growing in, sometimes it's as simple as listening to a podcast on a particular topic. Sometimes it might be reading, sometimes it might be going back to school, getting another credential. But I think that this is an important aspect to feeling fulfilled by what you're doing, because our human brains are activated by novelty. And so if we become routine in any parts of our lives, the joy that we receive from that can often diminish. And personal development, learning new things, this is a way to kind of constantly keep that part of our brain happy so we can appreciate the things that are more routine. Next slide. And then finally, obviously being connected to others includes our family, but it includes the community, even to the neighborhood level that we're a part of. And so some of the most satisfying and impactful experiences that I've gotten to have here in my own hometown, like Sara moved away but came back, and it's just been incredible to be able to contribute multiple generation wise back to a community that was so helpful for me, and to realize that while you can do a lot as an individual to change your own circumstances, it's really special to be able to improve the circumstances for other people. And so being a part of your community in a really significant way is an opportunity that I would encourage more individuals to really take seriously. There's such great need and there's such great opportunity to contribute and to be part of developing solutions that help not only your own life and the lifestyle that you get to live here, but also really make it a more livable community for everyone. So with that, next slide. Next slide, please. Thanks. I'll show you just a peek at the work that I do at St. Anselm College. I direct Equity Labs, and we are a workforce development and community resilience incubator. We really focus on resilience and social equity. So we have leadership development programs. We work with organizations to provide technical assistance around diversity and inclusion. We run programming around culturally inclusive leadership and conduct and support community efforts around equity and social impact. And then finally, we provide resources and programs for resilient and restorative practices in highly stressed workplaces and workforces. So for schools, for first responders. Currently, the lab is working on a resilience program for first responders and offering peer support for those who are on the front lines of COVID-19. We have 2 different times, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And next slide. This fall, or this spring rather, we had our first leadership bruncheon, and we really focused on stories of resilience. So we heard from Dottie Graham, who had been appointed to the Superior Court and whose nomination had not been successful. And she shared what that experience was like for her and her family. It gave a lovely lesson to us all, and how to be really own your own journey, no matter the circumstances that you're facing. Next slide. Thanks. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Oh, next slide. That's my sister. We co-hosted. Next slide. I think I had some placeholders here. If you can just advance to the end. So this fall, we have a Thrive Accelerator program. It takes that badass and bold tool that I talked about earlier, turns it into a professional development program, and we have some leadership program coming up. Finally, the Monday after Father's Day, I'm still ironing out the details with Stay Work Play, but we're expecting to have a panel event on fathers and fatherhood in the Granite State. So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for the opportunity this morning.
Thank you so much, Loretta. I think we're getting a lot of great advice in terms of how we can apply, some of these bullet points to our own lives. I really appreciate you all taking the time to speak with us, and everyone who is watching the webinar on your computers. I want to introduce Aimee Giglio, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Dartmouth-Hitchcock. And she, I think, has an interesting career in terms of showing how she has really risen up in the ranks at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and especially with the human resources angle, I'm sure can talk to how we all can, push ourselves in terms of our professional development and recognition within our own companies. So Aimee leads a department of 80 with an annual operation budget of $20 million and reports directly to the CEO and president at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health. She had served as the interim Chief Human Resources Officer since February 2017 before she officially took on the role. And prior to that, she held a number of different roles at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. So Aimee, I'll let you take over now. Oh, Aimee, yep, perfect.
Yeah, so I'll take myself off of mute there. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to Pubali, Sara, and Loretta for sharing your story with us today. I'm very inspired to be a part of this panel today. And also want to thank New Hampshire Business Review, because I think especially in this time of uncertainty, it's great for us to be able to get together virtually to share. So next slide, really wanted to start with some of my leadership journey and kind of take you through how my career has enveloped over the years. But it really starts with sort of the beginning, as I have here, which is the family tree. And you'll notice that this tree has roots, but also has several members on it. And I love the fact that others on the panel today shared pictures of their family. What I wanted to share with you is that, I think we all come from different family origins, and that is what defines and makes us and sort of builds our experiences as a person, and certainly into our careers as leaders as we move forward. I was raised by my grandparents, and I'm very close with my two aunts that were very instrumental in building not only confidence, but the values that I've taken with me throughout my life here. And if you go to the next slide, one of the major things that has been imparted in me is sort of no matter what you do, where you're going, what challenge or circumstance you find yourself in, is to really rise to the challenge, be confident in what you do, and imagine what you can be doing and want to be doing to live the life of your dreams. So if you go to the next slide, what some of my core values were as a growing up, what I learned and how have I established that over the years. And if I were to impart anything, it's much like what the other panelists said today around how do you continue to learn and lead throughout your life, and what are the defining moments that really make you, and who do you surround yourself with? I think all of us sort of earlier on in our careers, at least for me, had mentors that guided and supported, and not really recognizing early on in career how that was sort of unintentionally shaping and molding thought processes and direction. But feeling very fortunate to be able to have several people that I had worked with or had surrounded myself with, whether they be family or friends, that became those unintentional mentors for me. The other thing is around, I think, starting out early in career, really through experiences is how we learn, and that's sort of the informal education through experience that helps to define how we take risks, how we make decisions, how do we weigh what's the reward, and what direction we want to go in. And if you go to the next, I have a little quote here and I never thought I would have a movie quote in any of my slide decks, but one of the things I liked about this one is it talks about surrounding yourself with people, mentors, to help guide you and advise you. But the most powerful people to surround yourself with in that regard is the people that really support you in being your truest self, and being in honoring how you develop for yourself, which is not necessarily in the likeness of other people or other paths that people have gone on. And so I wanted just to, if you go to the next, walk you through a little bit of my journey. And really, this is not to show you necessarily my resume, but really to give you a sense of, I think what a lot of people find themselves in is when they start out in their career, they feel like they're on almost like a linear path. So much like many people, I started in my younger years, 15 years old, I think I was, working in a catering company, and then I became a bank teller, working every summer and holidays at a local bank, got into retail. And then when I went to college, I actually got into social work and got a bachelor's in social work, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. I started my first job as a psychiatric case manager at a local community mental health center, which wasn't necessarily the environment I thought I was going to be in. My internship was in a hospital environment, but learned a ton about human dynamics and helping people with mental illness and the diversity of our community in that role. And it was a very rewarding role. And at the time, I worked with a manager who was really promoting me to go on and get a master's in social work, that was sort of the path that I was on to become a therapist and maybe even beyond. So it felt like a very linear path. And if you hit the next button here, what I found myself and what I actually often talk about in talks that I do about your sort of leadership evolution is I actually took a sharp right turn. And so sometimes the path that you think you're on is not necessarily the path you find yourself in as you move through your career. So I started, if you hit the next level here, and I went to financial services. So I went from working in a mental health center to a corporate financial services environment. And actually, rather than going back to school and working within social work, I got a master's in business. And was very fortunate to move through leadership by the people that I worked with there. A very male-dominated environment. However, I had a very strong female leader that I worked with in the financial services organization that helped to not only promote me, but to help to navigate the complexities of working in that environment. And that's really what launched, I would say, my career in human resources. So blending what I had learned in social work with business, I was able to move forward, and I ended up, if you go to the next, getting a new job in more of a formalized leadership role. I had heard about a program, a doctorate in leadership in organizational health, that I was very interested in, and I ended up going and back to school and getting that education. And through my career, some of these turns and twists that I think many leaders take in their life, you learn that sometimes the path that you think that you're on is not the path that you end up being on. So going from healthcare to financial services, going back to school and getting my doctorate was really what I thought was the next step to sort of support me getting into maybe education and at the teaching level. But there was a role that opened up next at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. And that new job really propelled my career, starting with a director and taking on more things to become a vice president and now the system chief HR officer. So my point in this slide is to show that be willing to take risks, be willing to change career paths. I feel like coming back to Dartmouth-Hitchcock in the healthcare environment, I'm coming home to what I originally started with, but certainly in a different role than I had set out to be. On the next slide is a visual that shows that sometimes you're hopping along and you think you know where you're going, but then you find yourself maybe in the woods, maybe you get lost, maybe you fall in the water, but you always, sort of those lessons in leadership, picking yourself back up and being confident and staying true to who you are is what moves you and propels you forward. So here today, if you go to the next slide, when we think about a career in leadership or taking on leadership roles, and I guess I would define from a leader perspective, and I know that's our topic today, but there are leaders that lead people and there are leaders of functions and programs, and leadership doesn't necessarily equate to working and leading teams, although I think leadership does always equate to working and working collaboratively with others. So here are some, what I would say, tips, if you will, things that I've learned along the way is, those core values I talked about in the beginning where I was, that I imparted from my family and friends, that really staying true to that, living and strengthening those values, and making a commitment to a purpose that's greater than yourself. So what is your own vision? Where do you want to go? And become very self-aware and willing to change, willing to say yes. I love that Pubali talked about the power of no and saying no, because I think that is very important, especially in leadership and being true to direction. Also saying yes and taking risks. It can help you along your path to be adaptive to a ever-changing environment. And I think the environment we're in now is sort of proving that to us to some degree in terms of how adaptive we need to be, both as human beings, but also as leaders. In the beginning, I talked a little bit about unintentional mentors, so people that come out to support you that you don't really recognize are helping to shape you. As you move through your career, I would encourage people to be very intentional about who they select to be mentors and the network that you surround yourself with, and making a commitment and having a lot of intentionality around your own professional development to continue lifelong learning and to grow and develop as you move forward is going to help you to be a more well-rounded leader and a more well-rounded person. And the experiences of working with other people and getting a diverse network around you will help to shape and give you an idea of where you want to be. Being brave and having the courage to take those risks, as well as being true to where, don't let other people make career decisions for you, make career decisions for yourself that are going to give you satisfaction, both in the work that you're doing, but also in life. And then two other things I have here, which is, Pubali talked about no one gets there alone, and I think Loretta and Sara addressed this as well in terms of the people they've surrounded themselves with that have empowered them. And how do you pay that forward and empower others? You achieve more results by surrounding yourself and helping people to advance. I think one of the misnomers of leadership people often find themselves in earlier on in career is doing things themselves. And so, or not necessarily developing other people to help along the way. And that certainly is something that I would impart in all of you and have learned throughout my career. And then also, even though your career often becomes integrated into your life, live life and live life to the fullest and do things that are outside of work and have hobbies that help to not only empower, but to give you the richness of life, and you'll be able to give back more to other people. So the next slide just has a graphic here that is the iceberg, which is what's below the surface of all the experiences and values that you hold true. But really what at the tip of the iceberg is how you show up and how you show yourself to others. So lastly, I would just say, I think if you go to the next slide, that today, from a leadership perspective, I love this quote from Brene Brown about taking responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and having the courage to develop that potential as a definition of leadership. I just love that definition. I think it's very true. But lastly, I would just say, if you go to the next slide and then hit the next one, that by all of you attending today shows that commitment to learning. And I hope that all of you learned something and you're able to pay it forward, both in your own life as well as in the life of others. So thank you.
Thank you, Aimee. I think that was great to see that on paper, you know, it looked like your career is very linear, but then when you explain your background and how you got to that point, it shows us that sometimes, you know, there's more twists and turns in there that people might not realize when they see a professional of your stature that has, you know, risen to such a high management level. It shows, you know, we're all human and we all have our own pathways to getting to where we are at now. I think my first question for the panel, and I do encourage our audience to submit some questions, is, you know, how did, I mean, some of you have answered this, but how did you determine your best, your career path? And, you know, what, and if you could provide some advice to our audience in terms of how do they determine what to do? Because I know sometimes we have a passion for one thing, but then we're trying to figure, okay, will that work as a career, or do I need to reconsider what sort of industry I should go into? Maybe Sara too, I'm kind of curious with your psychology degree and ending up in finances, you know, what did you think of making that switch? And was it more so you saw an opportunity and thought, okay, let me give it a try? Or, you know, what kind of leaned you to trying out a different industry? Oh, Sara, I believe you're on mute. Can everyone hear me? Okay. It doesn't have to be Sara. I'm just curious if anyone has any advice for our audience in terms of like how you found your own career pathway, you know, what sort of industry you chose to enter into or have ended up in. Oh, Pubali, are you on mute? Let's give that one more try. Just getting past our technical difficulties. Oh,
there it is. Okay.
Oh.
Now, okay. No, it wasn't showing on mute on my end. So I'm sorry about that. And it's too bad I just shared some brilliance and everybody missed it. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would argue that my trajectory wasn't something I planned, and I think, you know, I made it to senior leadership and human resources starting out in the fitness industry, and I think what happens is, I would say, look for the red thread connection. You know, when I'm in a professional transition now, but people have often asked, you know, how do you get from being in fitness to being in HR? And I always tell them, it's obvious, people. You know, I mean, look at Aimee's trajectory, look at Loretta's trajectory, look at Sara's trajectory. We as people have certain patterns of behavior and certain patterns of values and certain patterns of preferences that are consistent. And it's a question of applying those behaviors, preferences, and values to various opportunities. And so I think it's a lot easier than people think to go through your life, because you know exactly what it is over time that you're good at and what you begin to have a lot of interest in. The problem is, I think all of the ladies on the panel will agree with me, that you have people that like to put you in a box and you don't fit their definition of correct, because they like to see a particular progress and a progression. Those aren't going to be your people, right? If people are going to put you in a box, that's not going to be the person you want to spend the rest of your life with professionally. So you have to find people that appreciate your trajectory and your preferences and values. I think that's what I did.
I would echo what Pubali shared, and I would say that if you are of service to some project or some organization or in some role, and you are effective, people are more than happy to allow you to continue being effective in that way. but that may not be what's feeding your passion. And you may see yourself in a broader way or in a way that has opportunity to make some more decisions rather than support other people's decisions. And so for lots of reasons, those people you're being most helpful towards may not see that. And so you need to own that, and you need to look for opportunities for yourself that can get you to that next level. And for some people, that will happen within your organization, within the group that you're a part of. But for many, many other people, they need to create those stretch opportunities for themselves, and they need to either through board service or through professional development or through special projects even within an organization that may not seem like they're your scope, but they will upskill you, they will broaden your network, and they will be so invaluable. So I always say say yes to as many things as you can, and then see what fits well. What do you like? Who do you like working with? How do you like to plug into something that's already going on? And trust that however that is the right way for you. And to Pubali's point, right? It doesn't matter if it's the right way, if it's helping you be successful and learn a new strength for yourself, then it's the right way.
I do have a question from someone in our audience. She asks that she's an experienced leader. She's looking to go to the next level as a director. She's wondering how you have been able to propel yourself to a higher level position. I think Aimee could particularly speak to this. And she has multiple degrees and years of experience, continuous learner, but she's just not been able to get to that next level yet.
Yeah, Lisa, when I think about that, some of the advice that I've given others and has worked for me is if you're working in an organization and you're seeing part of the strategic plan or the direction of the organization, that there are special projects that are coming up, that's an opportunity to volunteer for those projects, even if it seems sort of out of your realm, to say I'd like to participate in that, and that gives an opportunity for people to see you stretch your skill set and take on new challenges that are above and beyond your current scope. And that will often lend itself to people recognizing you in leadership positions as one example.
And I'll add to Aimee's statement, a couple of things that come up for me when I hear that is, one, have you asked? A lot of times there are people, and I'm sorry to say this is more of a prevalent behavior in women professionals, which is that there is an expectation or a need for an invitation. And I can tell this individual who asked the question that I don't recall, other than once, people asking me to join leadership. I've always been the one to say, can I have it? Can I have it? No, what can I do to get it? And if I can't get it here, I'll find somewhere else to go. And I think that behavior is difficult and it's challenging, but I think it's one way to achieve leadership. The other thing that comes up for me is what is your degree of introspection? A lot of times, if we are not achieving something repeatedly, and it's in different places, we have to look at what the common denominator is. And is it us? And is it something we're needing to do where we check 6 boxes, but there's 4 that we've left unchecked? So I think it's important to ask also for feedback and say, look, I was excited about this, I didn't get it. Can you help me understand why? And what can I do better or differently? I'm not saying those are silver bullets, but those 2 things come up for me as well when I hear that question.
And Pubali, I have another question that's actually towards your presentation. Someone asked, how can they, obviously you need to consider what your competitors are doing. So you said don't get too focused on others, but how do you find that balance of obviously being, having a good perspective on where you fit in the grand scheme of things?
It's easy, one-word answer, values. When we compare ourselves to other people, and we're looking to benchmark. Benchmarking is important. How are our contemporaries doing what we do? And how can we learn from that and grow from that and maybe even do it better? But there's this whole aspect of how we treat our competition that has to do with, do we know for sure that their values are aligned with ours? there are people that are going to do better than you because they don't mind being dishonest. They don't mind, you know, giving people, you know, giving bad advice. They don't mind doing bad things to people. And if that's how they're going to get forward and beat you at the race, they can keep it. They can keep that trophy. I don't want it. So I think it's a question of looking at your competition, not just looking at what they're doing and servicing good delivery from a business perspective, but look at their values, look at their market. How do they do business in the community? And if there's alignment there, that's a good indicator of, you know, being more of a follower than a leader in that case. So I would say it's about those values. What are yours, and are you going to compromise them by competing with someone else?
And I know we're getting past 11, but I do want to ask, just kind of curious, you know, because we obviously have our professional manner when we're in public, but I'm wondering if any of you have any insecurities that you had to overcome in your, you know, follow through with your career. Just a little bit. I mean, you know, as I mentioned myself, kind of getting past, you know, some, you know, anxiety and being quiet and getting to talk with people. So as I mentioned, it's always good to challenge yourself and get through that. One thing I wanted to note too, Pubali was mentioning, you know, that people can, you know, paint us into a box and fit us into a box. I encourage our attendees to consider, don't put yourself in a box, because I know as a, you know, I did graduate. I started as a print journalism major, went to international relations because I just loved this class I had that really taught me a lot about Iran and Iraq and how, you know, the political matters there. And so I think I had some, you know, grand schemes of what did I want to cover as a journalist when I got a career. I ended up in business journalism. Business was not a passion of mine, and it kind of more so was it was an opportunity. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And that's been my career ever since graduating college in 2011, has been business journalism. And I think it's fascinating too, that sometimes you think with business, it's, you know, the stock market or whatever it might be, but eventually you realize too that business encompasses so many things. I've written about something as, you know, kind of a feature style story about sheep farmers in New Hampshire and how people would make money through those means, just little gig on the side. So it's just interesting to consider that with your degree, all the different types of jobs that you can pursue. So let me just make sure that we don't have any other questions from our audience. Oh, Sara, I did want to ask you, what advice do you have for cultivating relationships and trust with clients? I know you have a very natural manner in which you engage with people. So do you have any advice in terms of how you engage with your clients and form trust in your relationships?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think, you know, going back to what Pubali said about values, it's really just, you know, being myself and staying true to those, you know, 3 things that I learned, like I said, from an early age, of always challenging myself and presenting myself as someone who's trustworthy and committed and shows up and follows through. And so, you know, when I think about how I've started to build my business here, it's by showing up in the community, you know, maybe not always in the role of a financial advisor, but as just a member of our community here, and showing up to be committed at, you know, whether it be community service, you know, or certainly in my profession, I 100% always show up as a dedicated and trustworthy person. That's allowed me to establish really deep, meaningful relationships that oftentimes and hopefully, you know, lead to business relationships. But first and foremost, just presenting myself as somebody who's trustworthy, reliable, and continuing to challenge myself and learn.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for participating in this event, and I hope that all of our attendees have gotten value over, you know, in listening to your career path and the advice that you've shared. I think this is a discussion that we're going to continue in the future. Especially, you know, we have a lot of great events where we bring together business leaders, whether it's virtual or in person. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person sometime soon. But I just want to thank everyone again, including our sponsors, Dartmouth-Hitchcock Health, Tufts Health Freedom, and Connection. I think we can, you know, sometimes we talk about at this time, things aren't truly on pause, but obviously a lot of us have to stay, you know, we're limited in where we are going right now in terms of staying at home. So I think that that provides us all the opportunity to see, you know, how we can, you know, what will happen when we are able to network again, and, you know, the fact that we can have some sort of preparation in terms of how to, you know, move our careers to the next level when everybody can move on from the COVID situation. So thank you again, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.